Welcome back to the Frequency of Fatherhood Summit. Today, I have the luxury of interviewing Drew Camp. I'm really excited. Drew is a dad of three. He's a combat veteran, and he's the founder of the Epic Dad Company. Those that know, it summed up TEDCO as the acronym there. We love acronyms in the Navy and in the Army. It's a brand and it's a mission to change the culture by helping dads level up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and the men that they're called to be. And Drew created that in 2021, and we'll dive in. I'll let him dive into his why to that. But I just want to say that this isn't just a company, this is a lifestyle. This is starting to take off. This is starting to transform. We're seeing community come from this. We're starting to see athletes, leaders, and providers really lean into TEDCO. So I'm excited to have Drew on. Thank you, Drew. Before we get started, I just want to ask you, why this work? What made you dive into this work?
First off, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me to come on. Look forward to having an awesome discussion about fatherhood. So the why. I've got three kids, right? Like that's the why for me. If you kind of go back to my history in the Army and kind of transitioning out of the military, it was tough, man. So I was in the infantry in the Army, and it's very clear you have like a very definite mission, definite purpose. You know what to do, right? And when you transition out of the military, all that goes away, right? You're no longer in service, and you've got to kind of define your next mission and your next purpose. And that was very difficult for me, as it is for a lot of service members that transition out. But that instantly changed. Like the second I had my first daughter, in the delivery room was like, all right, cool. This is my new mission, right? To raise this girl, to lead her. To support her, throughout her life, right? So that became my new mission. Since then, I've had another daughter, I've had another son, so I've got three kiddos, and that mission just gets broader and broader for me personally. But as I started to continue to become a father, noticed that I started to become complacent after a while, and it's very similar to what happens, with our military guys on like a deployment, right? So. Like I said, I was in the infantry, and so like when we first got into the country in Afghanistan, like you're scared shitless, right? You don't want to like take a step because you think your leg's gonna get blown off, right? And that stays with you for a little bit, right? And it forces you to become a better soldier because you always have your head in the swivel. You're looking around for threats, all around, see if anything looks out of place. But over time, you start to get used to that and get complacent, right? And you keep thinking, stop thinking about stuff like that. You kind of go out on a mission. It's just whatever. It's just another day. If you fuck up out there, somebody's gonna get killed. And so that started happening to me as well in fatherhood. Like I was super amped up about it. When I first became a dad, when my kids were very, very young. But over time, you kind of get used to it, right? And that mission starts to kind of fade off into the background a little bit. And so that happened to me. So I found myself, again, being complacent, feeling, depressed, feeling anxious, feeling stressed, not showing up the way that I'm supposed to. And everything really shifted for me when I found out that I was going to have a son. I love my girls to death, right? But they're not going to grow up to be men. And so when I found out I was having a boy, it was just like, it really forced me to look in the mirror. And take an honest, look in the mirror and say, am I living as the example of the person I want my son to become? And the answer was no to that. So that kind of forced me to do a lot of deep work, a lot of introspection, and really start doing the work on myself to step up, to lead, become the type of person, like I said, that I want my son to become one day. And that kind of helped start the Epic Dad Company as well. So I founded it prior to having my son Murphy, but when I had him, that was really the catalyst for, okay, we're more than just a supplement brand. We want to change the culture, because as you look around, there's so many fathers that have gone through that same journey, right? They're super excited when they first have kids, and that complacency starts to set in. And so that's our mission, right? Is to help change the culture by helping create those epic dads. And I am of the opinion that probably 99% of our problems in the US at least could be solved if dads would do that. If dads would step up, if they would, set the values, set the ideal, set the vision for their family, and lead by example, then we're going to fix 99% of the stuff that's going on. If you look at the stats for the US, I've actually got them pulled up here. So fatherless homes attribute to 63% of youth suicides, right, come from a home without a father. 90% of homeless and runaway children, 85% of children who show behavior disorders, 80% of rapists, 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. And if you look kind of broadly across the U.S., it's estimated that 43% of homes don't have a present father. And so when we really look at like, okay, we have a declining culture, instead of us just throwing policy band-aids on it, if you look at the root cause, it goes to fathers in the home. And so that's how I started doing the work myself. That's kind of what our company is founded on, is to help change those stats and really focus on fathers.
There's two things I want to highlight. Is it's actually, I get gratitude when men doing this. I interview men, and we always talk about statistics. It comes back to the statistics. And the exciting thing is this, right? And I want to throw something. For the longest time, we didn't have statistics around fathers because when I say we, the government did not think that fathers mattered, right? I was reading a book that came out early 2000s. It says, "Do fathers matter?" And they started to pick up studies on fathers because they realized that fathers do matter, right? And for the longest time, the generation that was before us, that wasn't the case. They were building the American dream, the Industrial Revolution. They were out providing for their families, and they weren't really the focus at that time. The second thing I want to dive into, because I can relate heavily, and the men that are going to be watching this niche of men, we both are combat veterans. You're actually still in the military. I am no longer in the military. And I remember when I transitioned out, I had put all my value in my job, right? Like I was so tied up into the mission, the purpose, the vision of what I needed to do within the military. And when I got out, I was lost. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where to go. And something that I wanted to ask you is like, how has the military shaped you, that your experience shaped you as a father?
Yeah, great question, man. So we'll hit on kind of the transition period, because I went and did the same thing. So I was active duty for a while, took a couple of years off, and then went in National Guard. So I'm still serving now. But that transition is tough, and you hit the nail on the head, right? It's because you place your identity around what you're doing as opposed to how you're doing it. And I think that's like the biggest misnomer that guys have when they try to like find their purpose, right? We always hear like, I got to find my purpose, find my purpose. And it's like, if you're trying to find your purpose in what you're actually doing, like that's going to shift over time, right? Like you're going to have this job, you may, transition, career paths, whatever. And so I have found it, just me personally, that if I try to define my purpose around that, it's not going to go well. I need to define my purpose in how I'm showing up and the attention that I bring into what I'm doing, right? And the impact that I can have. And so, it's very cliche, right? But like, hey, if I'm a garbage man, like I can still find purpose in that, right? Like I can still kind of see that as a broader mission, that I am helping the community, right? And I'm going to show up the best way that I can to be the best freaking garbage man that there is. And you find purpose in that. So that's one. And then two, that's kind of the identity around like what you're doing, how you're doing it. But when you die, Alex, and you've got a tombstone, like it's nowhere on there is you going to say that like Alex was the best at doing this job, right? No, it's going to say Alex was a loving husband, he was a loving father, right? And so that's where we need to define our purpose and find value in what we're doing, is how we're showing up there. And so most dads have it flipped. We have it flipped backwards, right? We put our work on our calendar first. Whatever time is left over, we try to put on for our family. And so we've got to swap that. We've got to find purpose in being the best husband, being the best father we can be. So that kind of, just wanted to bring that discussion up around purpose. It's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And then, and then going back to the military, what is kind of military service taught me around fatherhood? I think fatherhood is synonymous with leadership. If you really get to the core of it, right? It's not our job to be our kids' friend. It is our job to lead them, and you get hands-on training in very austere environments at times in the military with leadership, and you get exposed to great leadership, and you get exposed to toxic leadership as well. And again, it's in a very austere environment. So I have taken kind of that experience and thought, well, if fatherhood is synonymous with leadership, then how can I bring that same thing to the table with the father? So just kind of like brief history of my military experience. So I was an infantryman in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I got brought in as a college E4 is what it's called, college E4, where I had a degree, but I went enlisted basically, right? So I started out a little bit higher ranked than, like a private or a PFC or whatever, but I hadn't been in combat yet. Like I'm fresh to the Army. But because I had a little bit of experience, with college and with being like a collegiate athlete, is they put me in a leadership role right away. And our unit had just gotten back from rotation in Afghanistan. That was pretty rough. So, there was, combat hardened infantrymen that I'm like now in charge of that I haven't been on a deployment yet. And so I had to learn really freaking fast, what does it take to be an effective leader with guys that maybe have more experience than I do. And the way you do that is you lead by example, right? Is you have to go harder than everyone else. And you cannot lose, right? It's how you become a leader. And so, like, hey, PT's at 5 a.m., for example, like, dude, I'm there at 4:15, right? Like, I'm the first freaking one in the building. And I'm the last one to leave, right? When we do PT, there's no way anybody's going to be like I'm going to die on that PT field before somebody does more push-ups than I do, right? And so it's by setting that higher standard for yourself and leading by example, because especially if you're in that situation, is where like you may be in charge of people that have done more stuff than you. It's like you need to set a higher standard and hold yourself to it. So that's kind of specific to that. And how I bring that to fatherhood is it's the exact same thing, right? Like our kids are looking to us for guidance. Our kids are looking to us to set the vision, to set the values, to set the standard. And so we have to bring that same approach to being a father. And the biggest, like I talked about toxic leadership in the military, right? And like my biggest pet peeve with the military was hypocrisy from leadership. And if you say you're going to do something, you do something else, like your guys are going to lose, all credibility and all trust with you, instantaneously. And so, that's the same thing with being a father is if I'm telling my kids that they need to eat healthy, if they can go beat anything they want to, right? Have this big dream. And like, here I am as a dad, I've settled. And like, it's obvious that I've settled and I'm not fulfilling my potential. Like, who the fuck am I to be telling them what to do, right? I'm not actually doing it. And so it's that same approach of like, I need to set a higher standard. I need to set the vision for my platoon, my family. I need to do the things that I say that I'm going to do to be a leader for the family, right? And so that's kind of the takeaway from military leadership to fatherhood, which again, to me, fatherhood is just synonymous with leadership.
So when I was in the military, one of my stints was I was a leadership instructor. So I traveled around and I taught Navy policy. And I was reading a speech that was given back in the early 1900s, so well over 100 years ago. And there was an excerpt that stuck with me my whole time. Is if you're a loudmouth, profane, dirty captain, you're going to have a loudmouth, profane, dirty company, right? And so just like you said, it's set the standard, be the standard, right? And so I think a lot of times as fathers, and I'm just going off on a tangent to come back to my original question or another question is, for so long we want to be great, we just don't know how, right? Like I firmly believe that there's men out there, that the men that we're working with, the men that you're working with, they want to be elite fathers, they want to be better fathers, they just don't know how. And it comes to you, TEDCO, Drew, everything that you're building to show them the how, right? And so diving into my next question is like, I see that you're very big about physical fitness and I love it. Why is that why is it so important for dads to be fit?
So if you amass all the success, right, and you have all this money, and you kind of quote unquote are successful, and you are out of shape, I would not call that a success. And so like we have 4 pillars of our company, of kind of like how we're trying to help dads. And so the 4 pillars are our body, our relationships, our mind, our finances. And so like we want to be firing on all those cylinders. And so we can have one dialed all the way up, right? The finances might be dialed all the way up, but our relationship with our spouse sucks. Our relationship with our kids suck. Or we're extremely out of shape, et cetera. And so like to be great, right, at fatherhood, I would say you need to have all those 4 pillars dialed in. And the reason why fitness is so important is because out of those 3 pillars, that is the only one that is directly within our control. So that is the easiest one to go after and to start firing all cylinders. So that's number 1 is like we can control that, because outside of some like severe I'm sorry, my sun is like right where I'm supposed to be at this time. But outside of like some severe circumstances, right, with like, type 1 diabetes as a kid or something like that, right, is you can control your level of activity and you can control what goes into your mouth, right? Like you have control over that. As hard as it is, and as hard as you want to say it is, like you have control over it. And, but it requires discipline to become physically fit. And again, it's 100% within your control and you have to be disciplined. And so what we can do is we can build that discipline muscle in this body pillar to get physically fit. And that is going to have a drastic effect on all of our other pillars, right? Of like, hey, if I want to be a better husband and start showing up better, like, okay, first step, what are you doing for physical fitness right now? Like that needs to be step number one. You want to be a better dad? Physical fitness. You want your business to start exploding and taking off? Physical fitness. Because the discipline we build there, again, is going to have a direct correlation to every other area of our life. Bezos Quillian says that physical fitness is a gateway drug to personal excellence. And like, I 100% agree with that, right? And so, that's why it's so important, in my opinion, for dads to be physically fit. And again, it is the only one of those pillars that's within our control. So let's control the controllable, right? And like, let's focus on getting ourselves fit. And then we're going to start to see other areas start to advance as well.
I do believe too that like our physical fitness feeds our mindset, right? And so like it gives those endorphins and it really kickstart every aspect of our life. So like total correlation across those 4 pillars that you speak of. And I do want to come back to that because I think we should dive more into, because I know I've been watching you, man. You work with a lot of men, and there's a lot of men that are transforming, and there's a secret sauce into what you're doing. It seems secret, but in reality, it comes down to those 4 things. I want to talk to you because you talk about being more present father. This journey is challenging. Sometimes we can be stuck in our own mind as we're in the journey. How can we find balance? How can dads find balance and become more present and intentional with their family during this journey?
Number one thing that we get, right, if we do a poll, for our customers, our audience, it's like, hey, what's the biggest challenge, for you right now? It's always like, I'm trying to balance all this stuff, right? It's like, trying to balance work, I'm trying to balance being a dad, trying to balance being in shape, all this stuff, right? And I will go out and just say balance is complete bullshit. If you're trying to balance it, then you're going to be out of balance. And so we talked about our 4 pillars, right? We have the 4, and the balance, would look like I'm trying to hit all of these all at once, give them all my focus at all times, right? Try to balance all this stuff, right? Like, well, a better approach that to me personally is, hey, there's going to be seasons of life, right? And you're going to have to focus on one of those 4 pillars during that season more than the others. That doesn't mean that pillar goes down to 0, right? But if we have all 4 pillars equal right here, and I just had a new baby, right, is like that relationship pillar is going to go up a little bit, and maybe my body one goes down a little bit, right? And so that's the balance. But if you're trying to operate at all levels at all time on all of them, it's not going to work out. And so that would be the first thing, is like, there's different seasons. There's going to be different focuses of your priorities during those different seasons. It's number one. Number 2 is, again, why balance I think is bullshit is if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to be able to give your focus to any one thing. And so the way that we try to help guys is by utilizing the tools, right? Of like, hey, can I block my calendar off, right? Or can I use the principle of, hey, 20 minutes focused work, 10-minute break, et cetera, right? And so what we say is like, when you're in the thing, be focused on the thing. Don't be thinking about something else. And so if you're at work and you have an hour block of time that you want to be really focused, grab your phone, turn off notifications, like be present in the moment, right? And then when you're done with that meeting, or if you're done for the day at 5 o'clock, is, hey, again, put that phone away, turn off notifications, and be present with the family, right? Like, eliminate the distractions so you can focus on what's important. And so that's why I say balance is bullshit, because, guys are at home cooking dinner, with their family, and I'm guilty of it too, right? I'm not saying that I'm not, but they're checking their notifications, they're checking email while they're trying to have a conversation with their kids or their wife. And like, it's obvious that they're not there present in the moment, right? So that would be, our biggest piece of advice is like 2 things. One, seasons, right? Is you're going to have to prioritize different things during different points of life, but at no point in time do any of those pillars go down to 0. Like, they're always a focus, just might not be the focus. during this season. And then two is, hey, when you're there, be there. So we have a statistic that we kind of quote, and I made it up, but it's a good statistic, that, a lot of dads try to be present 100% of the time, right? But they're really only there and present 60% of the time, right? It's like, hey, let's flip flop that. Like, guys have to work, right? We have to provide for our families. We want to go be fit. We have to take care of ourselves as well. But like, when you are present, be there 100% of the time. And so flip that ratio. Like, I may not always be physically present with my family, but when I am, and that is a focus, I'm going to be there 100% of the time, if that makes sense.
Comes up to me when you say all that. It goes back to you were saying, like, we're there, but we're checking our notifications. And I want to tell the men that are listening, and I know that you can relate to this, is like, change just doesn't happen overnight. Like, you do have to be consistent. I've seen a lot of your reels and the messaging you put out around consistency, right? You have to build this trust with yourself. And what came up for me was James Clear. There's a book called Atomic Habits. And he says, if you want to break your habits, the habits that you have to make them harder to do, right? And so, like, I like where, you were saying is blocking out time, maybe putting the phone at the door, or putting it away where it's not easily accessible, or things of that nature. Because over the course of time, then we realize that maybe that was a coping mechanism. Maybe that was a crutch. Maybe that was something that was keeping us from being present. And I relate with you too, man. You said that, and I did it last night, and I caught myself, and I was like, oh shit, I'm cooking, and I'm here on my phone as well. Like, let's put something to the side.
Yeah, and it's like I said, at it, man. I struggle with it all the time, right? And like, I run a business that, like, most of our stuff is online on social media, so like, I'm on my phone a lot, right? And like, my kids get on to me, my wife gets on to me, so like, I'm in no way perfect on that, right? But like, having the intentionality of trying to say that, like, cool, this is dinner time, this is not work time. Those 2 DMs I need to get back to, like, cool, they can wait until after dinner, right? It's not that important. So it's like, put the first thing first, right? Of like, what are you actively working on? What are you actively focused on? Like, make that the priority, and eliminate distractions is a huge one, man. And yeah, to your point, right? Like, even if it's just putting the phone away. So like, we have a free challenge called the Epic Dad 7-Day Challenge. And like, not to spoil a surprise if you guys haven't gone through it, but like, the last day is literally, it's put your phone in a drawer, turn notifications off, turn your Bluetooth off so it doesn't like hit up your watch or whatever. Like, turn all the notifications off, put it in your drawer, and go play with your kids for an hour. Like, that's the challenge. And like, when's the last time you did that, right? And your kids see that, and if you're there with them and you're checking your phone, like, you might as well not be there, man, if you're not present with them, and so, and the other thing on that too, right, is depending on the age level of your kids, but most of the time your kids they don't need that much time from you. It's just, they need you present in that time, right? And so, like, a lot of times I'll go play with my kids, for like 15 minutes. And they're like, all right, cool, Dad. Like, we're going to go do something else now. And like, that's all they needed. They needed 15 minutes of my undivided attention, and they're good. Like, I filled their bucket, so a lot of times it's not as much time as we think it's going to be. But if, again, use that word, if we're trying to balance multiple things at one time, it's just not going to be effective.
And the most beautiful thing about that is when we set that standard, that expectation, like, the kids are there. They're like, they know at this time, Dad's 100% locked in. And that is the ripples that we leave for the generations to come. That's the change, right? That, like you said, that's how you want your son to be. The expectation of like, hey, I'm showing up, and it's quality time, right? Quality over quantity. And so I definitely can relate to that. I want to dive into, I know you jumped into 2 of the pillars, but can you kind of go over your framework, the Epic Dad framework that you have, and how you help, like, how it's helped the men and that you coach?
So this has taken a long time to kind of come up with this. Probably a couple of years, to be honest with you, of just kind of like thinking on this, pondering on it, putting stuff out there, tweaking it, adjusting it, doing a lot of personal development. But we have created what we call our Epic Dad framework. And I've got a podcast episode on this that breaks it down into detail if you guys want more information on it. I think it's episode 72 on my podcast. But yeah, Epic Dad framework. So there's 6 pillars. And my view is like, hey, if we can go through this framework, if we can execute on these 6 pillars, like, you are going to radically change the way that you start showing up as a father. And so I'll kind of list them all out, and then I'll dive into each one a little bit. So pillar 1 is identity and values. Pillar 2 is vision. Pillar 3 is mission. Pillar 4 is wins. Pillar 5 is discipline, and pillar 6 is accountability. So those are the 6 pillars. And so what we do is we help walk guys through this framework. We have a lot of exercises, kind of thought exercises, asked for them to do during this framework, that by the time they get to the end of it, like I said, they're a completely different father that started showing up. So I'll talk about each one in a little bit of detail. So pillar 1, identity and values. So we talked about purpose before, right? We talked about kind of like, not knowing really who we are, right? And so you have to know who you are ultimately if you want to end up getting to where you want to go, right? If you're floundering, if you don't have your stake in the ground saying, I stand for this, then like you're never going to get where you want to go. You're never going to feel that fulfillment. And so many of us dads, and myself included, up until I kind of found this framework and developed it, are just floundering, right? We're just drifting kind of through life because we're so busy. We've got the family, we've got work, we've got all these pressures on us that like we don't even know who we are, right? And for a lot of us, we kind of wake up and we have 2 or 3 kids, and we're in our like mid 30s, 40, and we're like, what the fuck am I doing, man? Like, who am I? Like, I'm just going through the motions. I'm doing this shit because like people told me that's what I'm supposed to do, but like, who am I? And so identity is core, man. So what we do is we help guys come up with an identity statement. And I talk to you about like what's going to be on your tombstone when you die, right? Like what's important to you. Like that's pretty much what the identity statement is. It's like, this is who I am. And I'm going to put my stake in the ground. Like, this is what I stand for. And so we help them develop that. And then what we do is we like for all of our guys to connect with that on a daily basis, to adopt it as part of their morning routine. And so, it could be getting up 5 minutes before their family. They could be getting up 3 hours before their family. But like, we want you to get up before your family gets up, and we want you to set the intention for the day and to connect with who you actually are and how you want to show up. So that's identity. And then values, kind of the second piece of that first pillar, again, is like, now I know who I am. What do I stand for? Right? Is my values. And so we help guys craft personal values and family values. And so your personal values, obviously what's important to you, right? These are the filters that I'm going to have all my decisions go through. It's going to help me come up with the right decisions, my values. And so, super, super important, because again, that's going to help you understand what direction you need to go, is your values. And then we layer on top of that, because you are a father and you're a leader that we already talked about, right, in the home, is like you need to craft these values for your family as well. So we help guys come up with their family values too, and get buy-in from their spouse, from their kids, and then really think about like, how can I sounds negative, but it's not. It's positive. It's like, how can I brainwash my kids into these values, right? Like, how can we make sure we're connecting with them? How can they make sure they resonate with them? They identify with these values, on a daily basis. So, like, for instance, every morning, my kids are tired here, and I know they are. But like every morning before I drop my kids off to school, I say like, hey, who are you? And they're like, I'm a camp. And I'm like, cool. Like, what are camps? And like, they know it by heart now, of course, right? But they're like, camps are brave, camps are kind, camps are strong. And I'm like, cool, what do camps do? And they say, camps do the right things, they do the hard things, they do the fun things. And like, those are our values. And so it's just super important to them, because now they have a North Star. Like, they know who they are. And if they don't have that foundation, like, culture and society is going to give it to them. And it's not going to be what you want. So you as a dad, you need to, craft those values for your family, of like what you want the family to stand for, and make sure that your kids are identifying with it. So huge, man, personal and family values. So that's just pillar 1. And that's typically work that like guys have never done before. And so like just that in itself, they're like, holy shit, already start showing up in a better light. So that's identity and values. That's pillar 1. That is at its core. That's who we are, right? And then we go to vision, which is where we're going. So now we know who we are. We want to define where we're going. And so in my view, you can look kind of high in the sky, like, 50 years down the road, where am I going? But a lot of times that gets too nebulous. And so what I like to do is craft a vision about 2 to 3 years out, right? Because that's like within our scope of view. So we say, hey, where do you want to be 3 years from now, right? Like you personally, your family, where do you guys live? What are you doing? What type of impact work are you doing? What fills you up? What do you do for fun? And so we help guys craft like a very, very crystal clear, vivid vision of the future for themselves and their family. And so that now you know where you're going. And then 3, we dive into mission, which is really where the rubber meets the road, which is, okay, we know where we're going. How do we operationalize this and make it tactical and practical? And so we do is we help guys come up with 90-day goals. So quarter goals in each of those 4 pillars that we talked about earlier, right? So our body, our relationships, our mind, and our finances. And we help them craft goals in those areas. And we take that 2-3 year vision, we chunk it down to what can I accomplish in the next 90 days to take me closer to that vision? Because I'm not gonna get there, right? That's 2 or 3 years down the road. I want to have that in mind, but I want to bring that back down to, kind of bite-sized chunks. So that's mission. And then number 4 is called wins or habit. And this is really where like the magic happens, is habits, because we ultimately are what we repeatedly do. And so if we don't like the outcome that we have right now, it's like we need to change our habits. And so that's what we do is we have 6 foundational habits that we help coach guys through, and make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to those habits. And I put it this way: you were in the Air Force, you're military guys, like a C-130, right? A military aircraft is super heavy. I don't know how heavy it is, but it's stacked like thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. It's huge. And just imagine that sitting on the tarmac, right, at a dead standstill. It's like it would be irrational to think that it could just go up on its, vertically and just like take off like a rocket ship, right? It's like, no, it needs to get momentum. It needs to start building momentum to get there. And so that's what we do with our habits, because, if the guys listening are like me, what happens a lot of time is if I don't have these habits in place, it's like I'll have a good day and then I'll have a shit day. And then that shit day turns into a shit week and then a shit month, right? And like, it's just so hard, like snowball effect happens, right? Like a negative snowball effect. And so what these habits do is they eliminate that. Is I can have a bad day, right? But I know tomorrow I'm going to have a good day because I know what I have to do. I know what habits I'm going to hit. And so that helps get us into momentum. And then from there, we start seeing momentum, right? We start to see momentum even more and more, and then we start to see lift off. And so that's what the foundational habits are for us. And so that's habits. Number 5 is discipline. So again, we're kind of, broadly, the TEDCO is a supplement company, right? We're about fitness. And so discipline for us, we tie that directly to our fitness, so our physical fitness and our nutrition. And so, if you want to be a Ferrari, right, you're not going to put freaking 85, ethanol, whatever in your engine. Like you want to be fueling yourself to be a Ferrari. And so that's what we do is we stay extremely disciplined in what workouts that we do and what our nutrition looks like to fuel us so that we can show up better. And that, again, that discipline translates across all areas of life. That's discipline. And then last is accountability. So especially in this culture that today, in our age today, it's like glorified to like be the lone wolf, right? Of like, I'm out solo, I'm doing it on my own. But I'll just ask you, like, if you're doing that, like, how's it going? Right? Probably not well. So, men were not created to be lone wolves, right? Like we were meant to be part of a tribe, part of a community. And so that's what we do is we foster accountability. And so we've got kind of several communities and coaching stuff, but it's really all founded around accountability, that you want to hold yourself accountable to you and then also to the group, right? As the tribe that you're in. And so, but when I say hold yourself accountable, like why it's so important to do that foundational work that we talked about, like the identity, the values, the vision, is because ultimately, like you don't want to hold yourself accountable to a workout, right? Like you don't want to hold yourself accountable to not eating a donut. Like that's not very motivating, right? It's not very inspiring. Just be like, cool, I want to eat this donut, but I told myself I can't, because I'm trying to lose weight. Like that's not going to work, man. So like we do that foundational work because you want to hold yourself accountable to your identity, to like who you are and what you stand for. And so as people go through this, they do the foundational work. Now they know this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is where I'm going, and this is how I'm going to get there. And now all of a sudden it's like, cool, I have crystal clear clarity around why I'm doing this. And it's not just like, oh, I want to lose weight, surface level, right? So that just had a tremendous impact. So once we walk guys through the 6 pillars, they get all the way through Now they, again, they know who they are, they know what they stand for, they know where they're going, they know how to get there. They have the daily habits to set them up to get into momentum. They have the discipline to do it because they know why. And then now we surround them with accountability around that. And so, I mean, it's tremendous to see like the transformation.
What comes up for me is it requires this deeper level of connection with self, right? Like
Yep.
every pillar that you have to dive into understanding how you've showed up the way you've showed up, right? And I think that's the most important thing is like men, we're so outwardly focused, we don't know, like we don't have that connection to ourselves. And so we follow because we're told to, we're just going back to those habits that have been ingrained into us to just follow what someone tells us to do. But then when we build this connection, we start to realize, hey, you know what? That doesn't align with me. This is what I want to do. This is my why. And I can relate to that so much. You fired me up right there because there's so many men out there that say family is number one, but then they put their work as number one because they have the mind, they're still in their mind, they have to financially provide. And there's so much more than just financially providing. It comes to the emotional, the financial, the spiritual, the mental, right? The physical. And I love how you break that down because what I think is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, grow together, right? And so like what you're building is a community, and with that tribe mentality, you're going to grow exponentially. And I think as men, and I'll throw it to you just to ramble a little bit and see what your thoughts are on this, but as men, that masculine, we have this good competition, right? Like I firmly believe that when we harness positive competition, we want to be the best versions of ourselves. We're not outwardly focused, but we allow the energy that's around us, that contagious energy, to uplift us. And that's why community is important, in my opinion.
I want to go back to something you said right there too, that like, family is first, right? And like, your job is not the most important thing. So like we need to provide for our family, right? That's our job. And a big part of that is financially. And so when I talked about seasons before, right, is there's going to be ebbs and flows to that, right? And so, even if you are putting your family first and prioritizing them, like you may miss a ball game, right? Because you are financially providing and you're going through that season. And so, I'm not sitting here trying to say that like, you need to be 100% present all the time and just like focus just on the family and like, who cares about my career, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's going to be seasons, and if you try to balance it all the time, that's when we get into trouble, right? But if like for example, if you're going into a season, right, where it's going to be super busy at work, or you got a big project for the next quarter or whatever the case is, right? That, hey, if you put all your effort into this project, like you're going to get rewarded financially for it. That's going to help you be a better provider for your family. It's like, yeah, go do it. But like you need to have conversations, right? And set expectations up front on what that's going to look like, what timelines look like, what you're willing to miss, what you're not willing to miss. And, kind of like you have to negotiate the price before you go in, if that makes sense. And so like I'm building a business, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and say that like you shouldn't be worried about finances. You shouldn't go out and make as much money as you can. But you need to do it with the right intention and the right focus and the right conversations and expectations.
With that mindset, it requires a deeper level of communication, right? And I think that's what, like you said, what it comes down to is being able to communicate in those seasons. Like, hey, this is what I have to do. How can we have a win-win for all, right? Like how, and so like I definitely can relate to what you're saying because we do still have to provide. I want to close this because you gave a lot of good information, and I think there's a lot of men that are probably they're watching this and they're ready to jump on TEDCO Instagram or the website. How can men work with you? What products do you currently have available? Your last 2-minute elevator pitch. The floor is yours.
So I'll say this: like I'd say we're not in like the top of the first inning for TEDCO, but we're probably in the bottom of the first inning. So like I've had the company for about 2 years now. And it has been a freaking grind of a side hustle, right? To try to grow it, still work, and working early mornings, late nights, etc. But we've grown it a lot, which we have. But I would say we are just getting started. And so we have 3 verticals to our business. And again, like the overall mission is to change the culture. And we do that in three ways. So one is we want to help you get fit, and we want to provide all natural, 100% transparent supplements that are formulated specifically for dads to help you on that journey, right? So if you raise your hand, if you look in the mirror and you say, I don't like what I see, I don't think this is a reflection of who I really am, and you want to do the work, like we want to be the supplement company that supports you on that journey. So we launched our first supplement, which is a pre-workout, all natural pre-workout in March of this year. And that's grown exponentially, which is awesome. But you need more than just pre-workout, right? So we have a lot coming out in Q1, and so I'll spoil the surprise. And this doesn't come out until like February, right?
Yeah, not till February.
All right, cool. So I'm not spoiling anything then. So early Q1, we're gonna have a protein come out, and we're gonna have a multivitamin come out. And so they're a little bit different than like standard ones that's on the market. And so, like I said, we formulated these like specifically like for dads and what dads need. So we've got a bone broth protein that's coming out in January, which is freaking phenomenal, man. It's unbelievable. So we've got that coming out. So now you've got a pre, right? So you can, get up if you don't feel like working out, you take your pre-workout, you go be disciplined, you work out. And then we've got a post now to help fuel you post-workout as well. And then additionally, we're going to have a multivitamin. We're calling it our ancestral multivitamin. That is a freaking awesome formulation that really pulls from like the Paleolithic era of like when we had totally all natural diets and different diets. And so we're going to fill you up with like the resources you need and the nutrients you need, micronutrients you need to go out and be effective and operate at the highest level. So those are coming out January, February. And so I won't ruin anything when this comes out. But we have a lot more that's in the queue as well, early this year and into the mid part of next year. And so we'll be a lot more than just a pre-workout company. We'll have a full line of assortment of basically like, we're your go-to if you're a dad and you want to level up. So that's the supplement pillar. We have another pillar that's apparel. So this has been not a big focus for us at all. We kind of just have some stuff out on the website and people buy it and we're like, cool. But I think there's a lot that we can do with apparel to make sure that our message that like dads are extremely important to the culture, to move that message forward. So we'll do, a ton of new designs that really dads are proud to wear, that they can self-identify with our mission on. And so that's apparel. We'll have a lot coming out with that as well. And then the third pillar, which is definitely newer for us, is community and coaching. And so we kind of started this up because we would get asked all the time, right? Like these questions we're talking about, like although we're a supplement company, our mission is much bigger. And so dads ask us all the time, hey, how do I have better balance? How do I do this? How do I do this? Right. And then we would get questions. Hey, do you guys work with people? Like, do you do coaching? And we got asked that question enough that we were like, well, let's do it. And so we launched what we call our Epic Dad Crew, which is our online community. And it's 100% free. So anybody can join. And what we do there is we have all the resources that you need to walk through the Epic Dad framework. So what we talked about, right? So you can go through our online course. You can go all the way through, and be Epic Dad certified, so to speak, right? But then it also allows you to connect with dads that are on a similar journey, to ask questions, to share wins, to share challenges, and be part of a tribe. And then additionally, we have a ton of resources for you in that network. So that's newer for us. We've had a Facebook group for a long time. Facebook sucks. So we moved it to kind of this new platform that's super engaging for guys. So if you want to be part of that community, I'm sure we can share links or whatever. 100% free. We would love to have you, help push you to be a better dad. And then additionally with community coaching, is we have launched what we call our Epic Dad Accelerator. So that's a 90-day program that really it's intended to do three things. Like in addition to all the stuff that we talked about already. It is our Epic Dad Crew on steroids. And so what it's meant to do is build like unbreakable habits and discipline. Because like I talked about, we have kind of our core, 6 foundational habits. The crew is you do it yourself, right? It's on you. We give you the resources. It's up to you, right? We'll hold you accountable as a group, but you don't have that extra layer of accountability. So, but with the 90-day accelerator, you do. So that's number one is discipline habits. Number two is we're going to get you into incredible shape in 90 days. With a caveat, right? If you're 400 pounds, in 90 days, you probably won't be in great shape. You're going to be in a lot better shape than you are when you walk in the door. So we do custom workout programs, and we do custom nutrition plans for guys over those 90 days. And then, again, because we've done that foundational work, it's a lot easier to stick on a plan when you know the why. So that's number two. And then number three is we want to provide you a community, and we want to provide you massive accountability throughout this, right? So like I said, the Epic Dad crew is you do it yourself. The Epic Dad Accelerator is you do it with us, right? We're going to do it right alongside you, kind of guide you through our Epic Dad framework, provide you with every resource that you need, so that 90 days from now, you can look in the mirror and be proud of the man that you're becoming.
Drew, this validates my initial opening statement of this is not just a company, it's a lifestyle, right? And so I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for the knowledge that you're dropping. Men, if this resonates with you, everything can be found in the show notes. Reach out, take advantage of the free, take advantage of everything that this man is giving you, because your life will transform. Thank you, Drew.
Alex, thanks for having me on, man.
Have a good day.